Let's look at some Jack Kirby artwork, shall we? I recently made a video where I talked about a trip that I made to an amazing Jack Kirby exhibit of his original art. If you haven't watched that video, definitely check it out. I was super inspired by what I saw in that show and tried my best to share some of that inspiration and footage with all of you. I had mentioned in that video that I also happened to have received a book from Dark Horse Comics, this incredible book called The Art of Fantastic Four, featuring original art by Jack Kirby. This book is amazing and it came at just the right time. Hot off the heels of having seen all that incredible Jack Kirby original artwork. In a lot of ways, this book is kind of like taking a piece of what I saw in that show, being able to take a piece of that home with me. This is very much like an artist edition type of book. It's scans of Jack Kirby's original art. And if you're like me and you often watch this channel, you know that we look at quite a bit of artist editions on here and really get into the original art aspect of comic art. All of the imperfections that might be included, like whiteout and revisions and notes in the margins, all of that stuff is included in the pages in this book. It's really incredible. And for an amazing price as well. This is less than half the price of your average artist edition. I want to thank Dark Horse Comics for sending this one over. I will have a link in the description if you're interested in picking up this book, where you can pick that up. I also want to shout out the designer of this book. This is designed and edited by Ian Chalgren, also with John Lind. Ian Chalgren designs some really incredible books, and from what I've seen online, really has a deep appreciation and passion for original comic art. So in many ways, this almost feels like a passion project. I'm pretty sure he has also designed one or two other books in this collection. There is also a John Romita Spider-Man collection in this same format. I hope to also get my hands on that one shortly as well. It's also a really great size book too. This could very easily fit on your coffee table or at the side of your drawing desk, which is where I've been keeping it lately. Anyway, I had mentioned in that last Jack Kirby video that I made that I got this book and that I was planning on taking a deeper look at the contents of this book in a video. And it seemed like a lot of you wanted to see that video sooner than later. So here it is. I've been on a real Kirby kick lately, and so this is the right time to share this book with all of you and take a look and just make some observations that have really been fresh on my mind ever since seeing that Jack Kirby exhibit. And hopefully you enjoy taking a look at the contents of this book. So I'm going to stop talking and let's crack this thing open and take a look. One of the things that's easy to be struck by with Jack Kirby's work is his faces. I think it's also one of the things that he's most known for. It's kind of like his iconic trademark are his Kirby faces. They're very, very specific, and you also see a lot of his influence in other artists' faces as well. To me, it kind of is like Andrew Loomis on steroids in a way. That's kind of how I see his faces. He has all the fundamentals of like the Loomis approach to drawing like a classic good-looking guy or a good-looking girl. And he takes that and he just pushes it, stretches it. And like everything else with his art, makes it more dynamic and adventurous. And it's interesting to see how he really took like the fundamentals of drawing and really made them his own. And as extreme as his art can be sometimes, and as dynamic as it can be sometimes there's just, you know, a figure like that, a head turned like that, that just shows his capability and understanding of the fundamentals very, very strongly. You know, here too, where he's drawing these figures very, very small on the page, even at the original size, but he's getting all the proper gesture, the proper tilts of the head and the face, and keeping it uniform. You know, his whole like stylistic approach is consistent throughout. He had such a strong understanding of his own method, his own way of drawing this stuff. And I think that's very much what contributed to him being able to produce so much comic art. Some say up to 3 pages a day. There's a method and a consistency to it, but it doesn't come from nowhere. You know, this stuff is really an extension of classical training in a lot of ways. And like I said, I can't help but see some Loomis inspiration and Loomis methods within his work. I don't know if the timing of all of that matches up, if Jack Kirby would have been aware of Andrew Loomis, and if those books were around or instrumental during his time developing as an artist. I tend to think it would line up, but either way, there's definitely some sort of classic and classical training that is present, and then just being taken to the very extremes. A panel like this, so beautifully composed, you know, there's a lot going on there. And again, unfortunately, I feel as though this shrunk down and colored and reproduced in 1963, 64, whenever this would have come out, might not have done it as much justice as looking at it in its original black and white format right here. This is just such a well done, well composed panel. It's really imaginative, and in a lot of ways, like a lot of Kirby's art, it seems to come from the same place that a young kid might draw from, creatively and imagination-wise. There's a lot of wild ideas and imaginative sort of concepts, and they're put onto the page in a way that kind of feels like it comes directly out of his imagination. That's why I say it seems to come from that same place that young children draw from, where it's directly from their imagination and out of the pencil. But somewhere along the process of it coming out of his head and onto the page, it is filtered through either intuitive or practiced understanding of simple things like composition, page layout, panel layout, so that something like this could easily be too chaotic and too cluttered, but there's a clarity to it that luckily these black and white scans of the original art really highlights. With all of Kirby's pages and panels, if you squint, there's like a perfect balance of white and black happening, and a really well thought out arrangement of all of these values, including these finer, more, I guess, gray values like the speed lines or the Kirby crackle. And because of that, there's just a really great clarity. I mean, right here you have a lot of different textures happening. This could very easily morph and blend into a very muddy, hard to read panel, but there's such clarity here between the texture of Ben's bricks, this texture of this like tree bark happening over here, then the little bit of slight texture of the, I guess, concrete floor. Then you have some organic plant material. There's a lot happening here, let alone the word bubbles and the narration box. But it's composed in a way that's very clear, and it's also drawn and inked in a way that is very clear. And the inking too, within this book and with all of Kirby's work, shouldn't go unsung or unappreciated. It seems as though this particular issue right here was inked by Joe Sinnott, one of Jack Kirby's best inkers, if not his best inker. Certainly one of the best inkers of that era, for sure. And you can see where he understood what was being put down in Kirby's pencils, and had the very difficult job of finalizing that stuff, and really played such a important role in all of this clarity that I'm talking about here. No matter how descriptive and clear and precise Kirby's pencils may have been, a lesser inker might not have been able to interpret this stuff with such precision, clarity, and also like just great energy. There's these really, really bold, thick, classic comic book lines. It just feels like this whole comic, all the art in here was inked with like a, you know, a number 9 brush or something like that. Just a really thick, well inked up brush that is wielded by an artist with great precision and great technique. And you could just imagine these pages at full size, just on the desk of an artist like Joe Sinnott or Jack Kirby, and what that must have looked like, especially in that like in progress stage where some of it is still penciled and some of it is being inked. Man, I would have loved to have seen that. The character designs too, they're so wild, and I think it's easy to take some of these designs for granted just because we've seen so many of these characters over decades and decades, and we've also seen so many of these characters being interpreted by so many different artists. So it's kind of like in the zeitgeist at this point, all of these designs and characters. But I think it's important not to take for granted that at some point or another, these characters were created and seen for the first time by some young readers. And obviously that had a very lasting effect on many generations. But just like this faceless character guy, look at this design. It's so creepy and weird. But regardless, the design creates a opportunity for him and the inkers to create some really incredible like effects. These very, very like Kirby-like effects, these squiggly lines, these thin to thicks. So much of this stuff was referencing like pop art or, you know, inspiring pop art. You know, these very, very bold, graphic shapes and design. There really is a well thought out kind of like visual language happening on these pages and with these character designs. But when I see a character like this and the way it's designed and inked and kind of like the strange uniqueness of it, I'm reminded of like Paul Pope in a way. This reminds me a little bit of like, you know, THB stuff. There's certainly like a sci-fi fantastical element to Paul Pope's THB work that I can see after looking at this stuff. I can see where much of that really comes from a Kirby influence for sure. But just look at these bold outlines. Like look at Reed right here and how thick his outline is. And Johnny behind him, you know, his outline is almost just as thick. And yet there's still depth to this. There is a foreground, a middle ground, and a background, even though the whole thing is inked with such boldness and strong black ink. Yet there is a clarity to it. And again, I just attribute that to Kirby's design, his understanding of composition, and also just the level of skill that his inkers were working with and equipped to be able to handle. Look at this splash page right here. That is so bold and iconic and graphic in so many ways. I mean, you know, from a artistic perspective for sure, but even just from like a, you know, marketing, advertising perspective, this is something that can very easily sell a comic, sell a story. And if you're, you know, a young person flipping through a comic in a drugstore or something like that, and, you know, you see this page really quick, this is definitely going to inspire you to want to pick up this story for sure. Anyone who grew up with how to draw comics the Marvel way will be familiar with this page right here. I think this image is sort of like implanted in my head from a very, very young age. This would actually be a really cool one to recreate, I think. You see here how just wild the proportions are. I mean, look at Reed's arms and shoulders, Johnny's as well. These guys are taking some form of you know, enhancements. I'm not sure they would pass a urine test, but it's pushing it to that to that level that is, I think, required in these kinds of comics. I think Kirby, knew his lane. He knew what he was good at, and telling, these like bombastic stories and creating these very adventurous and imaginative stories with these superhero entities, these powerful people that are way more than human. He was really, really great at doing that. It's within the lines as well. The lines themselves are reflective of the types of stories that these drawings are telling. These are powerful stories, high stakes, dynamic, fun, bold, non-subtle, non-serious, and these lines express that and say all of that just within themselves. Speaking of How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, here's my beat up, ripped copy. One of the things that I keep thinking of and am reminded of as I look at this Kirby art is this very foundational part of the book. This is in the very beginning of the book. Again, if you've had it since you were a kid or you've recently come across it, you'll be familiar with this stuff. John and Stan here are trying to illustrate how everything that is going to be drawn, further in this book, and everything you see in comics really starts off as one of very few shapes: a circle, a square, a cylinder. And if you understand the principles of these shapes, you can identify them in any other shape, whether it's as boring and simple as, a chair or a TV. Look at that old TV from the time. Or, a plane or a gun or a car. If you could understand the basics of a circle, a square, a cylinder, you can draw all of these other objects as mundane or as, superhero-esque that much more effectively. And then understanding, of course, how that translates to drawing the figure, how you could identify and use those shapes in constructing a figure, and then understanding how to light those shapes. Pretty much having an understanding and an ability to do that, you can then do all of this other stuff. And as I look through these Kirby pages, I can't help but notice how all of those fundamentals are here. I could see all of that in his construction of these panels and these pages. And it doesn't matter how long you've been doing this stuff or how good of an artist you may think you are. It never hurts to be reminded of just how foundational that stuff is and the importance of that stuff. It can be identified in as detailed and as advanced artwork you can find. It could all really be reduced down to those really, really basic principles. And if you're able to utilize those basic principles, you can create something that is as extraordinary, or at least hope to create something that is as extraordinary as the work that Jack Kirby created. It would be awesome if Marvel Comics reprinted a lot of those early Fantastic Four comics, but did it in this black and white format, this like original art black and white format, but at the size and accessibility of just a regular comic book. That would be great. Maybe like the first 10 issues or something like that. I think so much of Jack Kirby's artwork gets lost in some of that earlier reproduction process. And I think there's a completely different aspect to it when you see it in its like really raw format of this black and white incredible artwork. So for what it's worth, I figured I'd just throw that out there. I doubt anyone at Marvel Comics might be watching or might take that suggestion seriously. But as a fan of comic art and Jack Kirby's art, I think that would be amazing to see. Anyway, I hope you dug this video. If you want to get your hands on this book, I recommend it. It's a pretty amazing collection. I will be putting a link in my description to where you can pick this thing up. Also, if you have any questions or comments, anything that you saw in this video, want to elaborate on or ask, please do leave that in the comment section below. If you like the video, hit that like button. If you're not yet subscribed to the video and you want to see more videos like this in the future, consider subscribing to the channel. Also, I have a Patreon. I share a lot of different things on that Patreon. Current stuff that I'm working on, process stuff, behind the scenes stuff, things that I don't share on any other platform. I know some of you who watch regularly are on the Patreon. So if you're interested in joining the Patreon, I will leave a link to that in the description below. Also, I'm currently doing portfolio reviews. If you're an artist out there, comic artist, illustrator, and you just want a fresh pair of eyes on your work, you want a little feedback, insight from someone who's been doing this for a while, I'm happy to offer that insight and help wherever I could. I'll leave a link in the description below, as well as to how you can sign up for a portfolio review if you're interested. If you like the video and know anyone else that might like this video or videos like this, I talk a lot about specific comic artists and illustrators on this channel. I like to look through these incredible books and really appreciate original art. So if that's something that is of interest to anyone that you might know, feel free to share a video like this with someone you might know who might enjoy these types of videos. Sharing also really helps get the word out about my videos and the channel. Anything to help grow the channel and keep videos like this happening on a regular basis is much appreciated. I'm certainly inspired and motivated by all the great feedback that I get in the comment section and through emails. It really inspires me to want to keep making these videos, so I appreciate that as well. Anyway, that's all I got for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.